Hello, hello. It's been a hot minute. Just to remind everyone, hi, I'm Valgan. I do Udon content for the VR chat platform. I do normal C# development for Unity and some standalone stuff. I do some web dev now for a few things, graphic designer. But what most people are here for is probably going to be the WorldUI system that I've put together for VR chat. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be a little bit slower energy today. I went out with some friends for some curry earlier today, and I have a bad habit of eating more curry than I feel like is actually a smart idea. I've also kind of burnt my tongue today on the world's worst hot chocolate. I cannot describe how inadequate this hot chocolate was. It was a genuine saddening disappointment for me. The curry was great. The hot chocolate at that restaurant was also great. The hot chocolate at my bank's customer appreciation event today, much less great. But I got a free spatula out of it, so I'll definitely be. Today is more positive than negative, given the addition of free spatula, I'll be honest. Alright, let's kick things into gear here. Let's make sure everything's pulled up correctly. Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing some fixes, requests, add-ons, features, and whatnot for the WorldUI system. That is going to start with something that is currently in progress. Excuse me. Where we are improving the data storage for this. So one of the big issues with WorldUI as it is currently is if you have a lot of settings, it eats up your allotted player data very quickly. I don't remember how much you can have, like if it's like 100 kilobytes or something like that. But it's not a lot. So one thing that I had been meaning to do, but never got time for originally, was instead of every variable, every setting in your thing, having what's it called? An individual key for your data storage. We just store everything in a byte array. So floats and ints get turned into a linear interpolation, just like a lerp. For the min and max range, that is allotted into a byte value, and things like bools are just 0 and 1. So that'll cut down on the amount of your data that's taken up explicitly via the name of all of the variables. So let's go ahead and crack this out here. Now I've got a bit of progress set up on this already. Do I have one in the scene or not yet? I don't think so. I don't think I have one in the scene. Easy enough. Let's go ahead and here, WUI persistence. I'll just crack this open. If we could just put a WUI persistence. I'll just like that in the scene right now. Bonk. Oh, that opened on the wrong monitor. Let's use the auto capture thing here so it properly grabs everything. Perfect, perfect. I'm going to turn the music down slightly. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. So for our persistence settings, we basically just set it through here and read it from here. But what we need to do is build out these arrays to begin with. So WorldUI persistence is going to require a additional component, which I'm not actually sure. Where is WorldUI persistence callback stored? Is that in the editor folder? Yes, it is. Okay. So WorldUI persistence is going to have a assistant script. Let's see here. How do we want to grab this? This is a static class for that. These are things over here. Let's go ahead and just make a new script for it. So WorldUI persistence. Oh my god, the most difficult part of coding, coming up with a name. Let's describe this thing. This is a helper system for, screw it, I'll just put helper on it. WorldUI persistence helper. It's the most basic generic thing to do, but I always feel like it's a bit of a cop-out to just call something helper. Alright. The only reason we're doing this, like we're having this helper component here, is because we're going to shove everything into it from a list feature. So let's go ahead and do a public struct, or I'll just do class. Public class setting. Okay. What do I want to call this? We'll just do persistent ant or ent. ENT value. It'll be public string, title, public int, public bool, and public float. Let's do boolean and integer. And we will have a enum for this. So a public enum value type. Persistent value type. This will be bool int float. Swap those around. So what we're essentially doing is when we build our system, instead of generating all the keys dynamically for all that stuff, when they are built, it will look at this helper and create a new one of this if it doesn't already exist, and go from there. So public list for system value type values was new. Let's give this the serializable on it. Oh, and of course a public value type for system value type and system value. All right, so public void set int, and I guess we'll just start with the set bool string title bool value. Actually, we can just go ahead and call this set value. So now what we want to do is iterate through this and find the index of the one that we want. Actually, we don't even need the index. We can just set it directly through a for each. So for each values, oops. Persistent value, sure, yeah. If persistent value title equals title, continue, and we invert this. So now, since we're setting a bool, we'll do persistent value dot type equals bool, and persistent value dot boolean equals value. This probably wants me to do it in a link way, doesn't it? I'll just do the for each. It's easier to read. Now we're going to duplicate this a few times. And instead of doing bool, we'll do int and float. And similarly, we'll do float and integer, int and float. Now, we actually need to cancel out of these because this only sets an existing one. So otherwise, we need to do... Well, let's have some constructors here. Public, persistent value. String title. Title equals title, and type. There we go. Type equals float, and float value equals value. Now we swap this for bool and int. So integer that. Hi Belgin, are you interested in making tutorial videos at some point again? I would love to. Honestly, kind of one of the big issues that I've had with it is just fitting in the time for it. One of the things I really want out of my tutorial videos is that they're able to be very useful for an extended period of time and have a high enough quality that you don't really want to skip through them. And what that ends up doing is it takes a significant amount of time throughout the day. And the big issue I've had as of late, to be fully honest, is that my current work is like 5 different small contracts. So I'm jumping between little tasks every day to the point that it feels really difficult to set aside an entire day for making a tutorial video, which is essentially what it takes. It takes an entire day. And I do get a lot of requests in my Discord server for things like that. And I think it would be really cool to jump back into it. It's just so hard for me to fit something like that into my schedule again. It was really easy back when, say for example, when I worked at VRC. I had a full-time job, but that meant that I didn't have a million small projects I needed to jump between and like move my my attention from. So I really look forward to being able to do that again. I really do. Just really need to get like real full-time employment again. I would yeah, long story short, I would love to. Still waiting on a good job that can hold me for a while. I guess since you're asking, do you have any specific in mind? It probably won't be the same, but if you have any questions, I can probably go over something for you. Obviously, it won't be like the tutorial for you, but yeah, whatever you like. All right, so otherwise, values, add new, this is value, title value. Bonk, bonk. All right, now for the persistence callback. We don't want to be instantiating this. This was from a older setup that I had done. Excuse me. Let's make this a array. Nope, we'll just for each it. Object dot find objects by type. Or is it of type? I think by type is the new one. We persistence helper. Include none. Personally really interested in making game mechanics. Think of self-made card game systems, truth or dare and such. Gotcha. Those are something that might work better as a stream, because otherwise anything that's more complicated for, let's say, like networked game systems like that, that's something that's pretty difficult to squeeze into a small, like even 20-minute video, especially with the format I do, where I do it both in Udon Graph and Udon Sharp. More complicated games like that can absolutely be just like a dedicated stream, where we come in and we do 2 hours of just figuring out this is the system, and I basically do a live tutorial. But unfortunately, a lot of my tutorial videos are probably going to stick to things that I can fit into that, say, a 20-minute mark, for example. Alright, so with persistence helper, you are going to do a acquire component type of GUI persistence. That way we can assert that there's a persistence thing on you. Helper dot get component GUI persistence. Man, I did not realize how long this song was. There we go. I asked about its length and I got scared. Got it. I watched back the Puzzle Game Tools 1, 2, 3 streams, but it's a long watch, and I wonder how it'd be in a more compressed form. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the big things with a lot of the stream version of tutorials that I've done is I'll think out the idea in my head and go to implement it during the stream. Whereas when I do a tutorial video, my process for what I do for a tutorial video is I make the thing once, and then I think, okay, I did this right, I did this wrong, and then I do the same thing again, but with those fixes, and I just start talking to myself as I do it. Then I do that 2 more times. I delete the system, I do it from scratch again, I say it out loud how I'm doing it, and the 5th time I record. So while I don't write a script for my videos, it's functionally scripted because I just essentially said the same thing 3 or 4 times in a row. So as a result of that, the end product has me making all the right decisions the first time, which is a lot harder to do on a long-term project like puzzle game systems or stuff like that. Now, I think on those streams I probably ended up doing a lot of the right stuff because, to be frank, I've done a lot of puzzle game features in VR chat, even if I haven't made a lot of puzzle game worlds. Excuse me. That's just like kind of an interest of mine. But yeah. You had mentioned specifically cards earlier, and I really like the idea of doing card games in VR chat, but the issue always comes down to one thing, and that's the textures. So you're going to have, let's say, 52. You have 52 different cards that you want. It's going to be a bit of a like a VRAM complaint if you have 52 different texture, 53 including the backs of the cards. So otherwise, you kind of want to atlas as many as you can into a single texture. But then, how are you planning on doing that? Do you want some kind of tooling that turns it into a bunch of UV meshes? So, for example, I have a card system on like Booth for free, where you could just play cards. And the difficult part about setting up that is it is 52 slightly different models because all of the UVs are just slightly offset to the next one. Now, arguably, you could probably automate that kind of thing so long as you had the mesh set up, and you could give it the X and Y scale of your texture, the margins and stuff like that. There could be tooling for that, but that's probably not a great thing to do as a stream. That would be something great as a product where you could just take this and make your own card game with it, but it would be a like 4-stream process of building out that card game generator. So it would probably be best to have some kind of bespoke setup for it, and I'm not entirely sure what the good one is to come across. Because again, the issue is that for every card you have, if you haven't atlased it, every one of those cards is in your VRAM. And that's a lot of individual textures. Especially if you want your like game world to be like quest compatible or stuff like that, you're going to run into issues with like just having all those individual files taking up your VRAM. And of course you can mitigate this by having smaller textures, but all of the individual ones are still just going to start adding up. And that's the big issue that I ran into. And while I don't like the solution I have where I manually set a bunch of UVs on the meshes, it's what ended up working at the time, and people have used that. Now, there are options such as you don't use a mesh, you just use a sprite on a pickup, where it's just the physical object in your scene. And that's certainly doable as well, though that is not something I have gauged performance on, and it's a little bit more annoying to have a back side that's different from the front side. Sure, you can set up a shader that has a custom renderer for the background as well, but I just haven't checked what the performance is for that. So for example, I don't know if 52 different sprite renderers can batch, even if they use the same textures. It's a lot of unknowns for me. So that specific implementation might work great, but there'd be a lot of learning I'd have to do in order to find the right one to recommend. Sorry if that's a much longer answer than you were kind of after there. Yeah, you have no idea how many times I've wanted to make like Yu-Gi-Oh in VR chat. I think that would be a freaking incredible experience. But I've actually been getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh a bit as of late. I don't know why. Alright, so let's start pushing this data around. So we have our persistence helper, we have our persistence script. So now we need to push that data over to it. So let's go ahead and make a list of strings. Let's compare to the things that we're comparing against here. So we have our helper here, which has a list of this class here. With this, we need to turn this into key names and key values, which are bytes. So, yeah, fortunately, these are statics, but let's go ahead and make them public so we can access them. New string and list byte values equals new list of bytes. Byte. I'm gonna rename these to key names and key values just to make copy pasting easier. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. So we'll do helper.values value, and we'll switch statement to the value.type. Just give us this. Then we can actually start here by doing key names.add value.name title. We'll just call this name. Once we have that set, we can go ahead and do key values dot add, and now we want to do WorldUI persistence dot from bool value dot boolean. All right, I'm now realizing that this is going to be a bit more difficult with these other two. So for integers and floats, we need a range that we can use to interpret the byte data from. Yeah, so in order to do that, we'll just have that. Public int integer min and integer max. Public float min and float max. Int min and int max. Hey, hello. welcome. Excuse me. I apologize for it a bit earlier, but I'm a bit sluggish today. I actually just got back from some having some curry with friends. So yeah, no worries. But I am full of curry and my tongue is burnt from bad hot chocolate. So I'm not at the top of my game, but we're doing pretty good. But right now we are setting up some better persistent stuff for VRChat. For not to replace VRChats, but persistent stuff for the WorldUI setup. Now, could I hypothetically just store this as a JSON string and it would be really easy and way more efficient and probably better in the long run? Yeah. Will I do that? No, I will not. Mostly because I have other things to do. So we'll do float min and float max. All right. The persistent values. This is growing. Yeah. Okay. So we basically need to do the same thing down here, where we do int min and int max. We will pass those. Actually, persistent value dot int min equals min and persistent value dot int max, and I'll do the same down here. Float min and float max. Donkey Kong. And then do min max. So when we set these values, this will be called through one of our systems. We'll have to plug that in, but for now, let's just look at what it looks like in the inspector. All right, this is the persistence. This is the thing. We need our helper script over here. There we go. So now we have this, which is all of our backing data for all of our types. Realistically, this doesn't even need to be like, well, it needs to be serialized technically, but it needs to be public, but it doesn't need to be inspector serialized. But we'll keep it here just for testing things. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and look at our, let's just something in this menu. Let's turn off these. Let's go to settings. Tab page. I guess most of these are in fact integrated with the persistent stuff. So let's just look at couches, our couch toggle. So a couch toggle is a WorldUI toggle object, and this has a binding path here. So let's look at this. Create Do we want to set this during the creation of the objects or during post-processing? It might make most sense to do that. Okay, so when this is created, we need to bind its stuff to the persistence helper. But since it's going to be an Add-on, we need to reference it only through WorldUI persistence. Which I guess we can then do some editor-only calls to a thing. Where am I binding its, well, binding. Set default values, set element fields, icon title description, object targets. I guess it doesn't care about that yet. So, okay, let's WorldUI toggle, so WorldUI bindable. That has binding path, and we'll give it a public WorldUI persistence. So when we do this, our menu builder should check for persistent things that are children of it and grab that and assign it into this field. Then, okay, we're gonna have to move a lot of this persistent stuff off to the WorldUI persistence one. But first and foremost, we want this to be writing values. So let's look at when binding path is being set. Oh god. binding path equals okay. So one of the other things that people requested from this update is the ability to not have persistence on something, which is fair. There's a lot of things you probably don't care about having persistence, such as what menu you have set, or if for some reason you have a value that you want to reset when someone leaves. This menu just doesn't do that. So let's have a bool for that. Public bool. Actually, we won't have it on the WorldUI bindable because not having persistence will be indicated by the binding path just being an empty string. So let's go to actual creation things. So we're looking at builder menu element. Public bool. Don't use persistence equals true. This might have to be a don't use persistence, otherwise existing values get lost for people. Yeah, okay. I think that works. I'm now realizing that these don't implicitly have a reference to the field that they've created. I think that's probably a good thing just for tooling wise. Publicly bindable. Instance. All right, I'm gonna close a bunch of things. And can I open all? All right. I'll tab this over here. All right, create returns instance. This returns an instance. All right, so we have the drop down. Let's do builder event. This is going to largely be easy. It's just a lot of copy paste. My favorite kind of code. This is not true, fun fact. I do like my coding being an engaging process that I can talk about and discuss and show off to different people while I'm working on it. This is not that, unfortunately. Hello, welcome, welcome. Hey, how's it going? We are working on some improved persistence for the WorldUI system, where it's going to take up a lot less data to do all of its persistence. Hopefully you're having a good day. Let's see, that's our single select. Let's go over to our slider. Donk. Donk. Maybe instead of doing it like this, I should just... Okay, yep. That's... That's a much smarter idea. How's your day been so far? Mine's decent enough. Understandable. I had too much curry and hot chocolate that was both really bad and burned my tongue. But outside of that, pretty good day. Definitely on the up and at 'em. Let's see here. Okay, so I can't do that. Right, because the one we're actually storing is just a WUI bindable, whereas while we're creating it, it's being cast as that. Yeah, that's fair. Food side of things didn't pan out, no. Yeah. Alright. We got the slider, base. Let's go. Teleport. Toggle. Drop down. We already did drop down, right. Single select. Single select was already gotten. Okay. Single select quality. There we go. Instance. Not the bad hot chocolate. Yeah, it was. I have never been more unimpressed. I guess less I've never been less impressed by their hot chocolate before than I did there, which is kind of unfortunate because I went to my bank to do some stuff, and they were like, "Hey, it's Customer Appreciation Week." So they had a bunch of like hot chocolate, some trinkets and stuff. I actually got a spatula from them I really like. It's rare that you can get a good small spatula. I have no idea why they had one, but whatever. But they had some hot chocolate, and it was like the mix that you put into the cup, and they had cups and a large hot water container essentially. So you mix them yourself. The container was like, how do I even describe this? It was branded with the same name as the bank that I use, but they it was in one of those like plasticky tin-foily like astronaut food containers, and they had a pair of scissors on the table that you used to open it up, and the scissors just didn't cut it. Eventually I did finally get it open. I poured it into the cup and I stirred it up with the water, and it just like didn't taste like hot chocolate. It was like, if you've ever heard someone complain about the taste of town water or city water, it was that. It just tasted like bad water. I don't know if the packs just didn't have like sugar in them or what. But it just kind of tasted like bad cloudy water that was hot. Yeah, I'm not even sure I could call it hot chocolate. It is just, I genuinely like, I took it, I went to my car and I threw it out by the time I got home. But just the taste of hot water most. Yeah, pretty much. It was unfortunate. I won't say it was disappointing because I don't want to hate on my bank. I really like my bank. They've been around for quite a while. It's a very absolute minuscule small town bank that my family's been going to for a while, and we know everyone there. It's great. But my god, did they make some bad hot chocolate. Hot chocolate needs to be brought to justice, pretty much. Slider post-processing. Bonk. Slider volume. Toggle. We got that one set up. And we've got toggle colliders. Bonk. For my case, it was the bulk stuff your mom bought when you were young, because you're on a budget, so you can't really complain. Oh my god, okay. We actually had, when I was young, we had, it was that, like, pack of, like, hot chocolate mix with the really tiny marshmallows on them. But, I grew up on a farm, and our farmhand was ex-military. So he would just get things from military surplus really often. And he got an absolute massive amount of, like, misprinted hot chocolate mix. I don't know, like, how he got it specifically, but he had just crates of those things. And he gave a bunch of it to us. So we all had, like, slightly misspelled hot chocolate. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what on the label was wrong. I never figured it out. But it was you would look at the stack and be like, wow, that's gonna last for years. And it lasted one winter. We probably should have been a little bit more slow with it, but we just absolutely inhaled that stuff. It was just fine hot chocolate mix, but we had what we thought was an unlimited supply because surely we can't drink that much hot chocolate. And sure enough, we did. But yeah, that's the story of my military surplus hot chocolate. Excuse me. Oh, I need to drink some water here. Ah, there we go. All right, build menu, bang. Now, if I click on this, yeah, okay, we have an instance field here. Don't use persistence check. The actual, let's see here. The instance field probably doesn't need to be user facing. Let's see, do I have any WorldUI settings, or do I just have WorldUI for the WorldUI styles? Okay, so I don't have settings specifically for that. I broke the system up into my style system, my tweening system, and the menu itself. So these are settings for the styles rather than the actual menu stuff. But I was thinking I could have a check mark for show menu instance or stuff like that. But that doesn't really matter. I'm gonna go ahead and hide this field though, because I just don't want to clutter it up anymore. By the way, is it okay to ask you questions related to scripting related to Udon? Yeah, feel free. It's basically the main thing my Discord server exists for, but if you have any questions you want to ask now, then feel free and go ahead. I quite often end up working on one thing during these videos and it turns into a tutorial for another. But if you got anything on mind, just let me know. If I go bonk, bonk. Alright, and then no longer shows up. Don't use persistence. Perfect. Now, yeah. Alright, so with that done, got that set up. Let's go ahead and add our persistence there. Okay, so we're gonna go to our menu builder. And that's going to our editor for this. And this has the page info. Oh, where's the button? Where's the button we push that does the thing? Build menu. There we go. Generate the entire menu based on the tab page element hierarchy. Perfect. Okay, so instead of doing this here, we'll do if tab. Yeah, okay. We will set bindings for that. Tab group page. Okay, no. Our menu needs to have a reference for its persistence up here. I guess the first thing I ask is when it comes to deciding which path to take for coding scripts, what is better, Sharp or using graphing for all ideas? It really depends on what kind of what end project you want to have. I think Udon Graph is great if you're setting up a few things here and there, like mirror toggles or things that can have their entire feature set be described with just like a sentence or two. Because that's one of the big things about visual scripting is you are visually saying something that you're building out. So a mirror toggle turns a mirror on and off, like something like that. Things that you can very easily explain like that is typically something that works well for that. The problem is you get into a situation where Udon Graph is really good at doing small things, but very difficult at doing large things. So for any of my systems that I build at scale, I personally end up using Udon Sharp. Now, to be fair, I went to college to be a computer science major and failed all of my courses and became an art major. But what I did in 2020 was VRChat introduced Udon. I was like, oh, this is cool. And I learned programming by using Udon Graph. It just worked way better than what I was doing at college ever did for me mentally, but in terms of how I learned it. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing some obvious limitations for when I try to scale up my projects here. I guess I'll move over to Udon Sharp, which is one of the big things that had just kind of come out at the time. But yeah, give an example. Having a door open manually in VR versus toggling by a trigger. Let's see here. So obviously clicking a door to open and close it in desktop is pretty easy. You could just have it be a rotation toggle or an animator, but when you want it to follow the player's hand in VR, that gets a little bit more tricky. You can certainly do it in Udon Graph, but both systems are, Udon Graph and Udon Sharp, are basically going to have to solve the same problem. Essentially, what you're going to have to end up doing is rotating the door so that the door handle that you've grabbed is as close to the player's hand as possible, which essentially you can do with a look at and a transform.lookAt and then clearing out all but the Y rotation. It's probably your easiest solution for that. So either way, I think they're both pretty good for doing that. Essentially, you only need to do two things. One, well, I guess three technically. One, during start, you need to check whether or not the player is in VR, because that just can't change. And then you can store that as a bool, so that you don't have to re-get to that value whenever you need it. Though in Udon Graph, it's probably just easier semantically to just get that value new every time, where you just networking local player is user in VR. Or is user desktop? One or the other. I don't remember which one it is. Then you use that to check at the beginning of interact, where if someone clicks on something, they're in desktop, so it opens and closes. But if the user grabs it, then they can only do that in VR. So during start, you'd also have to say disable interactive equals VR. It is user in VR, and then you'd have a pickup on like a child object. That's the thing you look at. That you set pickupable on to true if they are in VR. And then you would probably have a second script on your door handle object that checked a on pickup or on drop to enable or disable a running loop for looking at the thing. It's not a like 5-minute task, but it's certainly doable in either system. I personally will use Udon Sharp, or what was it? Would that be one of the bones for the armature to detect? Actually, no. The easiest thing that you would want to do is just have like an invisible sphere at your doorknob, and when the user grabs that sphere and just picks it up, that's just an object that your thing then just looks at. You don't need to do any detection for the specific bones or stuff like that. In VRChat, the easiest option is just to have an object the user grabs, and you look at that object while they're holding it. And then when they drop it, you stop looking at it. You don't need to reset the rotation or anything, but a small square shape. Yeah. One thing though is that when the user drops the invisible object, make sure to move it back to the position that the doorknob is at, so that the user knows where this invisible object is. Excuse me. Then you can do a bunch of little things to try to improve it. Say you could have it automatically drop if you move more than half a meter away, because it doesn't really make sense that you're still holding the door at that distance. But at that point, it's just clean up and probably not super necessary for the project you're on. The reason I use Udon Sharp over all of the other options, like just Udon Graph or the likes, is because I care more about the usability of the end product than the usability of developing said product. So I spend 90% of my time making anything by making the tools that the end user will use for making it. And in Udon Graph, you don't really have that kind of customization. But for example, this system that I have for my menu is a massive C# generator system where 90% of it isn't in Udon. Like, a lot of this is just C# that is built to run in Unity to create this whole system. And that's a lot more difficult to try to do when the targeted stuff is Udon Graph, especially because, one, Udon Graph is functionally a different language. You would be learning 2 languages if you wanted to do that kind of thing. But I also understand that tooling developers aren't the majority of VRChat users, so it doesn't really apply to everyone. It's just kind of how I handle my setup. All right, let's get a OE persistence. What's wrong? Oop. Target. What is my reference to my? Where am I instantiating this? Library root builder. Oh, builder. That's it. Builder.get component in children. A persistence. Oh, I don't care about the persistence. I care about the persistence helper. So another good thing to ask: can scripts that are written in normal C# be used in Udon's version, or converted with different lines of code? There's a lot of the C# library that still works in Udon, but you have to write them inside of Udon sharp behaviors. So you essentially will, let me find some script here. I have WooE behavior, which is just the one I inherit from for everything, but it inherits from Udon sharp behavior. So as long as that's the parent class you use, you can do most Unity things. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of features of C# and Unity's implementation that isn't exposed. Some of it's just, it would be a hassle for them to implement, so they haven't done it yet. Or security reasons, like, it makes sense you can't just have the ability in Udon to call application.loadURL, and it just, like, opens someone's web browser to some random thing. That's probably a bit of a security vulnerability to do that. So there's a lot of things that are pretty limited compared to raw C#, but that's one of the reasons why I end up making all of the tooling that I do. So, for example, if I wanted to have a list of a custom class or a custom struct, since those don't inherit from Udon behavior, they're just like data storage, you can't have them in Udon sharp. So if I wanted to have like this, for example, where I have a list of all of these different values, that's not a thing I can actually do in Udon sharp. What I can do, however, is have an Udon sharp version that's just a lot of arrays, and a C# version that I use in the editor that uses all of the stuff normally, and then during the build process, it pumps all the data from this script over into the arrays, and all of that's done through index lookups. That's kind of annoyingly complicated, I'll be honest, but it is how 90% of my systems work, because it is the easiest for me to use and develop for. It doesn't mean that it's ideal. It's just the results that I found has worked best. Alright, so build menu. Got a lot to learn. Don't worry, we all do. Any kind of project or skill set, especially when it's software related, has a literally infinite skill ceiling. There's always someone who just happens to know something you don't, and you will thank them for it after doing the thing for 15 years. Let's see. So it's like a way for both systems to communicate without a hitch. It's a little wonky. So for example, it's very one way. So C# scripts in Unity can interact with Udon sharp scripts. But since Udon sharp doesn't actually do anything outside of like play mode or a build, those can't interact with your C# scripts. So it's a one-way system for data storage, essentially. If you, I'm trying to think of a good example. So I have the contact audio system, just like my footsteps things, and that has a lot of presets, which are objects in the project called like grass or stuff like that, and you can drag those into fields on different stuff like that. Scriptable objects don't exist as something that you can upload to VRChat, so that entire system relies very heavily on pumping all of that data into massive arrays of audio clips, IDs, and strings and stuff like that, and that is then reinterpreted as a data structure. One thing that you can do, for example, is Udon Sharp and Udon in general do have data dictionaries and data lists. These are VRChat's implementations of lists and dictionaries. These can be quite useful, if not a bit obtuse to learn due to their high level of abstraction, but you can use them to fake data structures in many ways. The real difficulty, and the reason why I don't use them, is all of my data structures care about the tooling in the editor rather than any data being changed or modified at runtime, like in VRChat. And data dictionaries and data lists cannot be serialized, which essentially means you can't have fields in the inspector for them that you modify and change and do stuff for. Those values are just lost during the build process or anything. They're essentially just empty. And there's things that you can do to get around that, such as VRChat has full JSON support. So if all of your data is, well, data, like strings, integers, floats, different like values like that, you can convert that into JSON, and at runtime, you can convert it from JSON into a data dictionary or data list. The problem comes in the moment you have object references. So like, say, for example, an audio clip. An audio clip isn't something you can put in JSON. It's not a thing that you can interpret into text, really. Not in a way that you can interpret from. So that's kind of why I've never ended up using data dictionaries or data lists for my data structures inside of Udon. They are quite useful for a lot of things. It is like the list and dictionary implementation for Udon, but the lack of serialization means that it's kind of not really found a use in a lot of my tool set. Sorry if that ended up being a bit of a tangent. I'll get some water here. But hopefully that was informative and not just a massive rambly mess. Alright, build menu, persistence. We start doing string, tab, group, binding, app equals. Now we do persistence dot set value. Okay, so aggressive bits and pieces, very useful information. Yeah, happy to hear. I'm trying to think how I want to handle page numbers. So if someone wants to go to tab 3 or something, for example, we need to interpret that data into a value we can convert from a byte, because this is all being stored in a byte array. The problem is I could just do page 0, 1, 2, 3, and that should probably be fine. Like, the idea of someone having a 257 length menu page list is probably a bit absurd. But maybe I do just implement byte handling for that. Or maybe I just don't put persistence on what page you've selected. That's probably the smart thing. It's probably just more annoying than anything. Yeah, I think that's probably safe to drop for now. Lufinator. Hello, Doug. It's nice to see you're still doing Udon stuff. I haven't been on VR chat in a while, but when I did, I remember watching tutorials. They were very helpful. Awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. If you ever end up doing a bit more Udon development or any kind of Unity stuff in general, feel free to either ask questions about it or show it off in my Discord server. If you want to kind of pop in there and have some interaction, we'd love to have you. No, you're totally good. I like hearing, considering I'm learning of this stuff. Just trying to dart towards a direction, considering I'd like to make stuff in VRC more immersive and interactive. Gotcha. If you're really kind of going for, this is something you're really going to dive into, and you don't really have a preference one way or the other, I think the skill ceiling of Udon Sharp is much higher than the skill ceiling of Udon Graph. There's a lot of reasons why Udon Sharp can be more expansive and just the amount of things you can do with it is just a lot higher. But there's also the obvious ones of Udon Graph gets really slow when you have 100 nodes in it. Not performance-wise in-game, just the editor for modifying things and pressing undo is a very rough process. When it starts getting bigger. The performance has gotten better over the years, but it's still a system that definitely tends to struggle at the limits of what it can do. Seems to be the play because I'd like more control over things and customization. Yep, absolutely. I think Udon Sharp would be the correct option for that. Again, if you were just going to do like some small stuff, it would probably be perfectly fine to be using Udon Graph. And don't get me wrong, there are people who make large, complicated systems in Udon Graph. Take, for example, Syrix. They do very big, fancy, like audio visualizer worlds. They also do games like Laser Dome, Fate of the Herbloss, and all of that's in VR chat, and all of that is in Udon Graph. However, they are a very visually oriented person and find coding to be the most daunting thing in the world, so they've simply chosen not to, and they just use Udon Graph. Little do they know, they're actually just coding. Yeah, it is, at the end of the day, a situation and a preference choice. Which is one of the reasons why in all of my tutorial videos, I do both. All of my tutorial videos have Udon Graph followed by Udon Sharp. Where Udon Graph, I explained the reason why we're doing all of the things that we're doing. In Udon Sharp, I just explained the implementation, because I've already explained the theory behind everything. Set binding. Okay. We have a set binding down here, which is going to make this nice and easy. We'll do public. Oop. We want a string binding path. Oops. Path equals. Right now, for me personally, I would love to make haptic or immersive interactions with VR chat games like Half-Life Alyx. Gotcha. VR chat does actually have the ability to run a haptic event. I don't remember what it's called. Let's go to VR chat Udon haptic. Play haptic event in hand. Where does this come from? Okay, yeah. Mind you, this all sparked from drawing on a chalkboard in VRC. How is this made? Searching ever since. Gotcha. Yeah. Fortunately, VRChat does make it pretty easy to play a haptic event for a player. Annoyingly, haptics are like a very complicated numerical thing, because it changes depending on what controller you're using, and there's like 3 different values you have to give. So let's just zoom in and I'll show you this here. So if we just get the local player, so we do networking, local player, play haptic event in hand. Let's just say it's in the right hand. So let's go with the right hand. We now have 3 different values to give it. The duration, like total time that it will run for. So let's say 0.2 seconds. Amplitude. Frequency. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what either of those do. That's a try them out and see what happens. And be surprised when it feels completely different on a different brand of controller. So while it's doable, it is just a bit annoying. I'll have to go back to your Unon graph videos. How chaotic would it be to make flight controllers to a ship in Unon graph? I'm still learning how to code. Really depends on the actual ship itself. So if it's just a rigid body that you're adding like directional impulse to, it can actually be pretty easy. Back in 2018, 2019, there was a stereotypical flight device that you would have where, let me actually just model it here quick in Unity. It was a very, very basic system, but it was in like every big fancy world would have it. Essentially, you would have your vessel, which usually was like a transparent, like a fishbowl kind of spaceship thing, and you would have a second thing, which is just a handle that you'd hold. It was essentially a gun, and the ship would rotate whatever way this was rotated, and would accelerate forward when you clicked on it. Now, I couldn't begin to tell you how to do that in triggers, but in Udon, that's actually incredibly simple. For one, you just child it to this object here, and then you use its local rotation to check what relative velocity, or I guess it would be torque, you would be applying onto the root of the flying machine. And when you are clicked down, you set a forward velocity for it. And when you release it, you just don't set a velocity. And that's actually a pretty simple thing that I feel you just don't really see that much anymore in VR chat, because it's the kind of thing that was revolutionary back when we couldn't code, but it's a lot less novel in the modern day, and I kind of miss that. I kind of miss there being like, this is the flying machine that you see in like 10 different worlds on the same day. How different controller layouts there are seems to be something you tweak back and forth based on feel. Yep, yeah, pretty much. Before I lost access to my VR headset, I was remaking Splatoon mechanics and got a prototype that worked with some pretty funny technical stuff. Gotcha. Man, that would be... I'm trying to think how you would even do that efficiently. Like, I could certainly see, like, oh yeah, the entire world is actually just a render texture. But, honestly, I think it'd be probably... Would it be some kind of like, point-based projection? Or maybe it would have... maybe the entire world has, like, a voxel map around it that has points that are color points, and you do, like... but I don't know what raycast you would do for checking that. It would be doable, but it would be an interesting thing to work out. I mean, it sounds like you were working on it, but yeah, it sounds pretty interesting. Completely forgotten about that. I'll have to try it out in graph. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. I'm not even sure I could find an image of that flying device. It's so like ingrained in my brain of like, oh, this was the cool thing. Okay, well, okay. Actually, I think the glass dome one might have actually been me putting a model over the existing one, because maybe they updated the video, but like the VR chat homepage, like the autoplay video that plays in the background, used to always have them flying around in one of those machines, and it was Ron the gray alien flying backwards in one. Yeah, I guess they have a new video now. Yeah, I remember that thing. I always thought it was super cool. Like the VR chat jetpack, I think is what it had been called, even though it was a seat you would get into. All right. While we were setting our binding here, we need to check now if we bindable dot. Oh, it would be element dot don't use persistence. Continue. Nope. This isn't a loop. This is a return. Crap. How do I... how do I want to grab that? I think I remember there was a world with a single tree house that has a ship. Maybe Treehouse and Shade does have it. There's an orthographic camera looking down at the map that would only see certain layers. It would render to the render texture, but not clear, so any particles it saw would just paint onto it. Huh. Okay. I can definitely see that getting complicated for like vertical surfaces, but you can also just level design around not having to implement that. Okay. All right, I'm running into a bit of an implementation consideration for how I want to do this. So I mentioned earlier that when I am doing a value as persistence, it needs to be interpreted as a byte. So if it's an int or a float, it has it needs to have a min-max range that it uses. And when I'm setting this, I need to be able to grab that min-max range from it. Maybe, okay, I think let's go WUI bindable. No, actually, I want to go to builder menu element. And this will have a public void write persistence. And this will take the persistence helper. There we go. And I will make that abstract, so I now have to implement it. Abstract method in non-abstract class. I don't want to make this abstract because that will break some of my other tooling. I can fix that after I fix it everywhere else. Let's see. Is there any resources you can recommend or videos you learned from that helped you learn Udon? I see you make tutorials, and if there's a video you make that helps, I'd love to know. Yeah, I don't have anything that's like starting from the very like start for some stuff. It really depends on what it is that you're looking to go out and make. There's no greater teacher than a personal project. So for example, if you want to have if you want to be able to learn something, you need to find some way to immediately apply that and at your own pace. A lot of how I learned Udon was I was really into Portal, like Portal and Portal 2, like Aperture Science stuff. And I was trying to move a lot of that stuff into VR chat through Udon. And I was awful at it and was slowly getting better and better because I kept like redoing the system that I wanted to work on. And while it did work for the most part, one of the things you kind of have to care about when you are doing that is you really have to have a project you're willing to sacrifice. Whatever thing you are learning a new system on is going to suffer because of that. So for the Portal stuff, I was more than happy to have that side project constantly get reset as I was learning, oh wow, I really should have implemented this in that way or something like that. The joy idea I mentioned earlier, that's my current goal. Gotcha. In that case, excuse me. Got some hiccups. What would be a good open the doors manually for my home world? I don't know of a great existing video for that. It would definitely be okay. Doors are one of those things that are a joke as far as game development goes, because they end up being really complicated in design more than they are in implementation. A lot more when there's NPCs they have to deal with. So I've kind of jokingly for a while been like, oh, maybe I'll just make an entire dedicated tutorial series focusing on every door implementation that you could have for VR chat. And it would probably be a good thing to have like 1 or 2 videos of, because obviously you can click on it and then play an animation to open it, but there's a lot of like user experience things that you have to kind of learn through that process. Like say, oh, you play an animation to open a door. Oh, someone was on the other side of the door and you've now just flung them off into oblivion. Or it just like shoves you into a wall. Well, one of the big things that you kind of end up doing in those situations is while the door is animating, or you've grabbed it and are moving it back and forth, you need to... Most of the time, the good solution is to put it on the walkthrough layer, which is a great layer for exactly that, because the player can pass through it, but if there's props or the likes, they'll still get pushed around by it. So you'll have a lot of basically exactly how a user would expect a door to work while they're grabbing it. But remember that the moment you release it, you have to swap it back to like default or environment or whatever layer you were using before. Portal, great example of games. Yes, I don't like making puzzle games, but I found that I really like making tools for making puzzle games, and that's kind of how I got here. Alright, so if we're writing persistence from this thing, this needs to know default value and its range. Okay, let's just go ahead and start at the beginning. Object toggle. Oh, we need a title for this. Okay. String key name. There we go. All right, so helper dot set value key name. Now this is a toggle, so we'll do default. Now this is going to be a bit more complicated on the non-toggles. For the most part, I think I don't need to change anything else here. Let's go ahead and close the toggle. Okay, does it play into the objects colliders? If I say a mesh or a box. For the most part, if something's ever going to be moving, you don't want it to be a mesh collider, because Unity really struggles to figure out collisions for moving mesh colliders. It is much better to make like 10 box colliders and just kind of line them all up than it is to have one mesh collider. Obviously, this changes depending on the complexity of the mesh, but it's a thing Unity's not great at. But if you are, like I was mentioning, you'll want to move the door onto the walkthrough layer, and this applies to any collider that it has. So basically, if something would otherwise push the player out of the way, that should be moved to the walkthrough layer during the door is moving part, and go back to either environment or default when the door is no longer moving. All right, single select base. Maybe I will just have to do a Intez byte. Okay. So let's go over and look at our where did I put it? Menu builder, bindable, use persistence. Persistence helper. Yeah. That can be done in Blender with a custom collider. I don't think Unity has a way to import colliders from Blender. It would be nice if you could. Though realistically, if you're just animating a door, one box collider should be more than enough to get the level of immersion. Very rarely do you need to have a mesh collider that is... Very rarely does a moving object need to have a realistically representative collider for the physics in Unity. Sure, this is a byte. Nah. Yeah. This. This will be a byte type byte. So now I need a persistence helper because persistent. We need a the second int. There we go. Method clamp value 0 byte dot max value. We'll do byte dot min value, even though they're basically the same, and then cast that as a byte. All right. Oh Christ, where were we? Single select toggle. We need our single select. Single select base. There we go. Oh God. Okay. I feel like that wasn't what we were doing. Was I doing drop downs? Oh, I was doing drop downs. There we go. All right, so, or, wait, no, I was doing toggles. Oh, okay, I had done toggle and I was done with toggle. Now I will go to drop downs. Here we go. All right. Persistence. Right, persistence. Okay. So we where is the toggle? Yeah. We want if don't use persistence, return. Cover dot set value, and this we want to do key name and I don't have a setup for a default value on drop downs, do I? Let's see, we have our options list. Set ints. We drop down binding set int value. Gotcha. Okay, so now I want we persistence dot from int. There we go. So that will cast the current actually int value the cast int value, but this isn't set during the it's not set in the editor. I don't think it is. So let's see. Drop down. I want to use. Oh God, I'm realizing a situation now that I have with this. Right now, my persistence stuff doesn't write to the persistence, unless it needs to. But what I'm doing here now will automatically write all of its data into the persistence, which isn't what I want to do. Am I fine with doing some array resizing at runtime? I think I am. Which in that case means we're about to undo a bunch of stuff. Thank you for the guidance and help. I really appreciate it. Just gonna do my project all day for today. No worries. I look forward to you having some good doors. Feel free to share them in the Discord server as well when you get some progress on them. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask there. There we go. All right, so I need to build our editor. Okay, this is actually the only thing we care about for setting the data. In terms of actually writing and getting persistent data, we need to do that separately. So when we bindable, you are going to have a reference to our persistence, which we have there. So we bindable dot persistence equals persistence. Okay, so this is going to be public void persistence. I joined that, forgot to mention. Yes, very helpful. Yeah, wonderful. Oh, what's the formatting of this about to be? Public implicit operator void persistence. No, public static implicit operator. Oh god, this is getting complicated. Void persistence helper return helper dot get component void persistence. There we go. I don't need to do that, but it's silly and it works quite well. The helper can just be auto cast as the thing that it's helping. Lovely. Lovely. Okay. So we have the persistence there. Now, our one component used set int. So we do player data set int there. So we'll do if versus okay, we need a bool for that as well. Plug bool, don't use persistence. Persistence dot set value binding path int value. Crap. Okay, we're gonna have to have some public virtual void set persistent int. This will do bool int and float. Bool, easy enough. Persistence dot set value binding path bool value. If persistence return. Okay. Maybe we can just set that here. Yeah, alright, we'll have public, let's grab the persistence helper. Grab those. Alright, these don't need to be visible, but I'll leave them for now. Persistent integer min and max, float min and max. Oh, this is complicated. Okay. Do set persistent int. The persistent float. And set persistent. Okay, so instead of doing this, we'll do float value min versus float min versus float max. Alright, and we'll do that similarly for int. Alright, but now we need to set these during some kind of build process, presumably. So let's look at our server. I want the VUI element, builder element. There we go. So this is bindable. Now is when we want to have the public void set binding string key. Let's see, bind key. Wait a minute. Yes, actually. So instead of doing VUI bindable.persistence path, we will do let's see, persistence. So WorldUI come on. WorldUI persistence, comma, bat. So we'll do instance dot persistence equals persistence instance dot binding path equals key. And now over here we'll do element dot set binding path. Alright, we need to pass in persistence. So that's set over here. Let's do that virtual so we can inherit from that for the smaller ones. Alright, let's go over to where is toggle? Toggle's nice and easy. There it is. Toggle's in fact so easy I don't need to do anything for it. So let's go to a different one. Do WorldUI slider. There we go. Set binding. So we'll do instance dot min float equals do I not have the min-max rate? Do I not have the range as part of? Oh, because this isn't the base. Wait, slider base, slider. Surely this should be part of the base values of a slider. I don't see why I would ever have that anywhere else. Outside of maybe just keeping the values close to each other. But they should still be right next to each other in that case. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Range dot x, then range dot y for the max value. Let's dock the finished ones down here. Alright, toggle, you come down here as well. WorldUI element itself doesn't have any, because we have the builder element up here. So I guess we can just put that down here because it's done as well. Collider toggle, that's just a toggle. So it uses the did I not edit? Oh, because I didn't need to. Bring that down here. Slider volume, that uses the existing slider range, so I can finish that one. Slider, also done. Oh, I'm realizing now we only have like 2 minutes left. I apologize. This stream has mostly been coding, and we've almost done nothing in Unity outside of put down 2 boxes to try to remind people of a flight machine from 2018. Oh, excuse me. Alright, so we're looking here for single selects. Great. Default. Some days it'd be like that. Yeah, this is. Plate entries. Yeah, we're just gonna do set binding. Well, I must have been on flight machines. Yeah. They're just talking about I don't remember if it was called like the jetpack or whatever, but it was a Japanese prefab that was essentially just like a flying sci-fi seat that you had a like a joystick you grabbed and aimed with to fly it in different directions. And it didn't give two hoots about what orientation you wanted to end up in. It was a genuine joy, even if it was quite nauseating. Let's see, persistence string. So this is single selects simply assert the single selects simply assert. Oh wow. Okay, so they're just going to assert an int value out of the byte. So we'll do persistence.set value. Yeah, they just assert a byte. So I don't think we need to do anything for this because this doesn't have a range. Because again, if someone makes more than 256 elements inside of a radio menu, that's their fault. Jetpacks are still showing the Steam page's screenshot. Oh, that's it. I was looking at the VRChat website for the video that plays there, and it wasn't there anymore. So I guess that's where you can still see it. Single select quality, similarly, teleport field doesn't have any bindings. Label field doesn't have any bindings. Event field doesn't have any bindings, and drop down is just a integer. So it doesn't have a range it needs to hit. So probably shown on the website too. Yeah, it was like one of the first parts of the video where Ron and the gray alien just like flung himself backwards. So perhaps that's why it's no longer part of the website after he left the company a couple years ago. It's been a while since Ron left. Like, wow, that might have been 3 years ago. No, he's off doing his own stuff now. I don't think he's doing VR anymore. Well, I've spent 2 hours writing code and haven't tested a freaking ounce of it. So I guess we'll run the build thing on the menu. That's into error or anything. Ron was a... I'm trying to remember if he was the lead designer at VRChat. Like product designer, not like art designer. For a very long time. He was an old friend of... who's the guy who actually owns Graham Gaylord, the CEO of VRChat. So he was his friend for quite a while. I don't think there was like a falling out or anything. They just wasn't a thing that they. Wait, there's no values here. What's going on here? Business helper. Messages were never found. Did I just do something with this? Am I an idiot? Oh, right, because I was dropping the thing from that. So when a variable will change, so let's say our toggle. Oh, okay, it was 4 minutes over. I probably should be just heading off here so I can like use the bathroom and stuff. But let's look at GUI bindable. Put you over here. Set persistent int. It does persistence.set value. Okay, so this is where we're going to have to do the array resizing. And for that, we do / to do resize these arrays. All right, and with that, that's where we're leaving it off. All right. Well, apologies for going a little bit long here, but I'd say it was really good catching up with everyone. I know it's been a couple weeks since I've like gotten a real stream in for a few different like scheduling reasons, but excuse me. Yeah, really good to hang out, really good to chat with everyone, answer a million questions about doors, Udon Sharp, everything else. Always fun to be able to just kind of ramble informatively. I take I've obviously talked too much for today, and it is a good time for me to be calling it for today. Let's see, there we go. How to step in and out at various points. Thanks to you for the knowledge. Yeah, of course. Great hanging out with everyone. I guess we'll see you next time. Next week should be at the same time, barring any surprise scheduling nonsense. It does happen. But yeah, good seeing everyone. I'll see you next time.